Hi everyone, it's Booney. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe and give this video a like. You'll get content updates on things related to neurodiversity, mental health conversations, archetypes, and geeky interests. So today is going to be a personal video where I talk a little bit, tiny little bit, about my experience growing up with ARFID. So last month was Autism Acceptance Month, and I tried to share a little bit about autism on my Instagram. Sometimes I feel like my voice does matter, and sometimes I don't think it matters at all because of the huge skew in representation for viral autism, informative autism content creators. Anyways, that's my own personal stuff and dealing with not being a person of the majority. Anyways, so ARFID is an acronym for Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. And it's sometimes, on the outside, it looks like what you would call picky eating. But on the inside, there's so many other things going on where a child is struggling to consume the food. So quickly, there are studies that show that the autistic brain has extra synapses, so extra connections from one neuron to the other. And what does that mean? So there's extra white matter, there's extra processing, things just feel way more intensely, and there's a possibility that a stimulation of one kind of thing from the outside world, let's say food, could go from one part of the brain and like go everywhere else, sometimes to a pain receptor. So pain is received instead of what a typical brain might be experiencing when you're eating the food, when you bite into the food, when you smell the food. And so the response can very much be painful experience. So that's part of it. Other things, so for my personal thing is I still have a hard time. I don't notice that my throat is dry because I don't automatically, by default, swallow. So there's some things with like occupational therapy where a lot of autistic kids, young adults, get taught to learn how to eat their food and swallow. Unfortunately, since I was never diagnosed, this is me self-diagnosing, I never learned to eat food properly. And so growing up, I pissed my parents off. I worried them. The adults in my life and my cousins, my older cousins, were always like, why didn't you eat? Why didn't you eat? Like, so I would be sat at the dining table for hours on end, 3, 4, or 5 hours. Everyone else would be done. It'd be dark, okay? I would sit there until they forgot about me, or I would run off and hide in the bathroom until they gave up. I would throw food under the table because I didn't want to eat it. And looking back now, I'm trying to put all these pieces together of like, why did I do that? Why was I not hungry? So part of it was I didn't swallow correctly. So if I didn't swallow correctly, I could have choked, right? And so as a kid, I picked up that certain foods weren't chewing and swallowing correctly. I don't want to die here, so I'm not going to eat them. So I would throw food under the table. I would hide food in between the sofa cushions. I would do whatever I can to survive in my way, which was not to eat the food because I didn't want to choke, right? So, but as a kid, I didn't talk a lot, I guess, on certain things because I didn't have this awareness. Like, I thought everyone had the same experience. I didn't say anything, right? And so they're just like dumbfounded. They would threaten me to like pretend to call the police because that's what, immigrant families do. If I didn't eat my food, they would say they would go to school and like watch me eat, make sure I ate my food. And I just ended up spending a lot of my youth sitting alone by myself. So as you can imagine, like, and then the contrast of that, like my dad remembers stories of me being super social. I would talk to strangers all the time. I would be so in awe of fireworks and nature and dogs and everything like that. And at this, like, just to have that contrast of like super social, love strangers, saying hi to people, saying hi to everybody, petting strangers' dogs, like, and then you have me, the loner, sitting there because I wouldn't eat my food and I wouldn't be able to like force myself to do it, right? And so that's part of it. So the part of like the not being able to, like, again, because the neural connections are wonky, I can't control where things are going. The brain controls everything. The brain controls my fingers. The brain controls the blinking, the things that are automatic in the body. The brain controls your breathing, right? The brain controls your ability to like send signals to the body to swallow and chew food. So like if that's not happening, it's not working. And so a next component is like interoception, is a term that's related to your body's ability to feel inner states of being, which is hunger, thirst, tiredness, a grumbly belly, feeling your heart racing, or feeling your lungs like fatigued from running too fast or something like that. All these things are a little different for people with different neural wiring. It's exceptionally different for autistic people. And so that's why you have people not being able to like control their bowels, having to get help going to the bathroom because they can't listen to the inner interoception cues of their body. It's not developed. And so you have to practice building these things that neurotypical people tend to already have. Okay. And so for an autistic kid, you may not always feel hungry either. And I know for gamers, neurodivergent ADHDers, this would be something that you can resonate with. You don't know always when you're thirsty, or you'll push too far where you're tired, but you'll game binge overnight anyways because you're getting that dopamine hit, right? Or you'll skip meals to keep on playing the games and you don't know when you're hungry. But when you go eat, suddenly the cue is being triggered. The stimulation is there now and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm starving, instead of just regularly, oh, I'm going to eat now. It goes from 0 to 100 really fast. And so that's what the dangers of having poor interoception are when it's not developed. The extreme thirst, the extreme tiredness, like you don't know when you're tired, you don't know when to sleep, you don't feel that cue. But like this is just my experience with ARFID in particular. So I just share that because there's long-term consequences of what this could mean. So it's not just picky eating or feeling like you're being, what do you call it? I'm acting out or trying to piss off adults in my life. Like I consider myself a pretty good kid, pretty good person. I've tried my best to excel in academics and make good choices in my life. But sometimes, these things are out of my control. And so like looking back now and learning from occupational therapists and neurodiversity affirmative practitioners who really well researched and using themselves as examples of how it actually looks, it's really helped me learn, internalize, and actually see like this is one framework, one example of what it could look like. And then the long-term, like really the ripples of how this affects adults who really don't get the attention, because usually the resources and funding for organizations usually goes to helping kids, 0 to 18. And once you're 18 and up, you're kind of screwed over, right? And so like you have all these adults late diagnosed, finally realizing there is something wrong. The brain is different, right? Sometimes it's so wrong it becomes a disability. So the long-term consequences is like I have a really difficult relationship with food. I don't have eating disorder, but I do feel a sense of shame for feeling like I am good enough to eat food because the message was I wasted so much food when, people work so hard. And I get it. You work so hard and you're struggling to feed your family and you have this one kid throwing food under the table. I wish I could go back and do something better, but I was just a kid and I couldn't explain what was going on with my body. And so I have a hard time sometimes feeling like I deserve to eat. And so this is not a body conscious type of eating disorder. It's more of a psychological like wounding of self-worth, because I, again, wasted so much money with the food that got thrown under the table or got stuffed in the sofa cushions as a kid. And I'm still working on it. And so I will use food in my own way to remind myself that I am worthy. And so everyone can have their own different relationship with food and other things in life. And so this is my own struggle. Another problem or like ripple that comes into play when it comes to having ARFID growing up and having it misunderstood is the the punishment that came along with it in isolation. So I could have, by choice, isolated because of sensory things and needing downtime to withdraw. So like, I'm going to throw in the archetype stuff, ENFP. We are known as one of the most introverted extroverts anyways. And so I feel like, the autism aside, I would have probably already been withdrawing to protect myself and like kind of rejuvenate, recover, come back. Part of that also now is like the habit and the comfort of being so used to being alone that, again, I'm using my dad's image of me growing up, so social, so happy, so loud and gregarious, but to have that kind of like get bypassed, or like the obstacle of now this new variable comes in where food situation wise, just used to being alone, I'm just used to being alone now. I'll sit for hours by myself, no problem. Again, this is the layer of like, is it autistic being alone? Just doing things by yourself because no social cues or understanding? It's a little bit of both. Because it has been habitual to sit alone and eat meals by myself, I don't really tend to think about eating with other people. I've spent a whole 2 years almost eating by myself. And so like, I don't feel anything about it until something like Valentine's Day pops up or someone says something or posts on social media. So like, it's this reference thing, self-reference thing of like, oh, am I supposed to feel bad about not having someone to eat with meals? Am I supposed to feel lonely? So like, I don't feel lonely usually, but if there's enough posts on the internet to remind me of how I'm supposed to feel, then I do. You know, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So that's my short ramble on early experiences with ARFID. I will link resources to an Instagram that I follow. They show great content, and maybe also occupational therapists to learn more about interoception and some things that they can do to help for expanding perspective, knowledge, or personal needs related to swallowing, chewing, listening to your body in different ways. So yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.